You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Hey, Power Athlete Nation. I'm John Welborn, and I'm joined by my good friend, Mr. Arash Sufiani.
Love it when you say it right.
I know. I actually worked on it this morning in the shower. Sufiani. And I am the guest of a show called Power Athlete Radio, and I have been for, it's coming up on a lot of years. I had somebody ask me, do you know who Tara Swart is?
You told me about
Yeah,
her.
so we had Tara Swart. She wrote a book that is called, and I'm totally blanking on it, even though I looked at it last night. It's called The Source. And that book was so impactful for me because I have always used visualization. And the way I visualized, especially playing football, was I would imagine myself, down to getting dressed, putting on the uniform, running out there, getting in my stance, being in the huddle, hearing the play, and running up, getting in my stance. And then the ball would snap, and then everything would go slow motion, and I would start practicing, whatever my steps. It was a pass slide, run block, whatever. And I would imagine myself doing it poorly and losing, and then going in reverse, and then doing it properly and winning. And we had her on the podcast, and her entire deal is what you can perceive of yourself and what you can create in your mind becomes your reality. And she's not only a PhD, but also an MD neurosurgeon, and wrote this impactful book. So it's why I have these art boards that have like a whole bunch of different images on them. I think she calls them storyboards. And I made them for the kids. I have them in my bathroom. It's the first thing I look at. And like I constantly am like, if I see a cool picture, I print it out and I put it on my board.
Yeah.
And so we were going back and forth. Yesterday, she has a new book that's coming out that she's working on. And as you know, the Everyday Athlete page on Sports Illustrated on SI, if you go to on S, or I forgot exactly what it is, we'll put the link up. But we have a page on Sports Illustrated where we've been putting a ton of our content. And as I was going through a podcast that we had done previous for her to cut clips so that we could do, I could start kind of loading more of this in, I just reached out and she's like, are you still doing Power Athlete Radio? I said, yeah, we've been going on it like, what is it, 12, 13, 14 years? It's a lot. It's like 800 episodes plus. And she's like, you started with multiple people, then you went to 2, and now you're 1. And I'm like, secretly, I always wanted to do it by myself.
Yeah.
I just had the other guys on there just more out of history. But I do enjoy having in studio guests like yourself where we can have intelligent conversations, because I cannot do the Dr. Mike where you're just like blinking because you're a complete fucking sociopath. And you're doing your best to hide it from the world, even though you're not wearing pants and you have your balls in a fucking cuff. I mean, that dude's a fucking psychopath. But him staring.
How to get roped into an internet beef.
Oh, dude, I think it came from Damon from the B team talking about the video that they couldn't put out of him rolling. And him, and then them, like everybody on the internet being like, "Who gives belt? We have to check him," which is constantly what you guys are saying to me when we were training in the weight room. Be like, "Who gives blue belt? Have to check."
I would love to see you and him and see how both of your guys' dogfight and half guard match up with each other, because you guys both have the same game. It's kind of like
that's bullshit. Dude,
you're an X guard player. You're
dude,
a Kura guy.
I am a Kura guy. I'm not a deep half, like bottom half guard, coyote guard guy like you.
You're a big half guard guy.
Do you know what I am? I'm I'm going to pass you with probably a one-handed cartwheel, and then I'm just going to sit on your face. I'm into that real fancy jiu-jitsu.
I used to believe that you exaggerated all these things, and then I would hear stories from white belts on the mat. Like, yeah, dude, John threw me into a wall. Like, I thought John was totally joking when he said he threw a white belt into the wall. No, he got thrown into a wall.
Yeah.
And so now when you say, yeah, I got this and that, I did the Sao Paulo pass, I did the Hodger pass, I'm like, he actually probably did it.
Dude, I do like the Hodger pass because I can go chest to chest. I mean, my game is really, I'll tell you this, I feel very fortunate to have influenced Lovato and Shanji and Salo indirectly with just pressure passing. That classic style of jiu-jitsu that I've, adopted. I'm just happy to see it. It's so powerful. It's now known as sloth guard.
Oh my God.
You got picanha guard. You got
picanha guard.
You got sloth guard. You have octopus guard. You have kurukura guard. I mean, picanha guard and octopus guard and sloth guard.
Oh man.
I love the fact that this dude put out an instructional called sloth guard, and he's like, yeah, you get chest to chest and you body lock people and you pass them. And I'm like, oh, I just thought that was Shanji and Salo and Lovatos.
And just cooking people.
Yeah. Style of jiu-jitsu.
I think in all paths lead to that, because there comes a day where you're not running around on your feet anymore, and you're going to have to get there anyway. So just get good at it. I mean, for me, there are some days, and it goes back to the whole, hey, sometimes you have a spoon, sometimes you have a shovel kind of deal.
Yeah, there was a guy that said that one time.
Yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah. And then for me, the days that I have a spoon in jiu-jitsu, I go to my sloth jiu-jitsu. And then some of those days where I'm on neurogum, 2 or 3 neurogums in.
Just to give the audience a little bit of caveat, and we don't have a sponsorship by this company yet, but it popped up because Ben wrote an article for SI on L-theanine. And so I did a little search on how we can easily get L-theanine into the system. And what came up first, but something called neurogum that has caffeine, L-theanine, and some other things in it. And so I ordered some. The only negative is it's kind of expensive. It's like 40, 50 cents a piece. So I ordered a bunch of it, and then I found myself chewing 1, chewing 2, chewing 3, and then I'm like, damn, I just had $150 or sorry, $150 worth of gum. Yeah. So I've been chewing through it, but I really like it. So now what I've done, I got the basic one. I got the double strength, so that means I'm only going to be able to chew half as much. But it's pretty cool stuff. You want to check it out. The fun thing about jiu-jitsu, and I know we've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about it, is the athletic problem solving piece. Yeah. Where now you're forcing yourself to have to figure out these real problems or the problems that are presented to you in a open loop situation, where now I'm basically reacting and trying to force pressure and then give and take. And I think that athletic problem solving is so vital for athletic development, but also for neurological efficiency and just anti-aging and everything. Jocko put it best, where he's like, lift some weights, do some jiu-jitsu, have some family and have some friends and a little bit of community, and you can get pretty far. In Jocko's very basic way of saying it, like lift some weights, max motor unit recruitment, central nervous system efficiency, do a little bit of rotation. You don't need to go down the there was something else I wanted to talk about. Go ahead. Have you heard the explosion, and I only know this because people have been asking me about fascia dedicated training?
Are you talking about the Lever King and functional?
He lost me where he said coffee and caffeine consumption was making adults autistic. Yeah, that neurodivergent disorder that happens to children, adults are giving themselves, even though every study that shows caffeine and coffee consumption shows a decrease in all-cause mortality. We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Do you want to build thick, sidewalk-splitting slabs of muscle? Let me introduce you to Jack Street. Get access to the same tried and true training methods I followed during my 10 years in the NFL, all to walk into training camp at 308 pounds at sub 8% body fat. Punch your ticket to the gain train and join thousands of residents already following Jack Street. Head to powerathletehq.com/Jack Street and claim your 7-day free trial today. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So I plain simple. Okay. Let's say you can train your fascia. How are you going to measure it? Because we always train these fascial lines through just in general in our training. So there's no way that you can isolate fascia in your training.
It's like saying, hey, I'm just going to train the muscles and not the nervous system.
Yeah, it goes against all principles of tensegrity that we know, which is that everything is connected in your body. So in general, you're always training fascia.
Well, and whenever you see them training fascia, it always looks like a little bit of rotation, a little bit of throwing, and a lot of like what we do within Power Athlete within our density days on Dragon Slayer. Yeah. So that's not necessarily fascial training. That's just good training.
It's just training.
Step, squat, and lunge, rotation, transverse plane, sagittal plane, moving in different planes of motion, supine, prone. I mean, all these. Yeah. I think probably the best form of fascial training I've ever seen is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
If you lift some weights. And so anybody that is a huge proponent of fascial training want to come, and we'll take the Lever King at his word, because he seems like a very extremely powerful man. We could take him to do some jits. One of the other interesting things about fascia, and I know this from Dr. Bueller, is a lot of emotion is stored in fascia. So the more fascia an animal has, the more emotional intelligence. Horses have very tiny brains, but have high emotional intelligence. That's why they use them as therapy animals. And Dr. Bueller related it to the fascia in their body. So maybe these individuals that are training the fascia have somehow found a way to grow the fascia, and their emotional intelligence has just made them massive cunts. This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
I can't argue for it. I can definitely argue against it in that, people want an identity to attach themselves to, which is why we see the rise and fall of so many fads. I mean, the internet has been really great in the sense that it shares this information quickly, but also it adds so much
shoots it at you.
It shoots it at you, but it's like a bonfire that goes up real quick.
Yeah.
And then it goes away. It goes away. I mean, we were talking about the Liver King just not too long ago. Now we have the Lever King.
Well, so man, I have a visceral response to the Liver King. He's just I'm kind of speechless with one. I mean, I realize he made a ton of money. Yeah. And if that was the intended outcome, but for the entirety of recorded civilization, you will be referred to as a joke. Like what impact did you make other than the fact that you were a fraud and people laugh at you? I mean, he has a documentary out, so good on him, but it just gives a glimpse into how insane he is. I did pull up a little bit of something on a conversation I had with Dr. Bueller about fascia. He talked about fascia providing structural support, transmission of force, and proprioception. It's effectively a superhighway that allows the central nervous system to connect the muscles in the body. It gives you your understanding of spatial awareness and where you are in space, and that it gives off signals that allow our bodies to, like as I'm walking, my ability to move like within space and against other objects. So, but he talked about a lot of dysfunction is stored within fascia that ends up short circuiting and turning off muscles. And so a big part of what they do is getting all that realigned. But the idea that you can somehow train fascia and make it thicker, that has not been proven, even though that's a big part of it. And then he also said, is thicker fascia necessarily is better for the individual? Right. So I just think it's interesting too, where you get people like, oh, I'm training my ligaments, I'm training my tendons. Okay, so isometrics, it's all connective tissues.
I feel like movement education in general is probably going to be more beneficial to people, in the same senses that we teach people how to break fall in jiu-jitsu, or we teach them how to avoid injury by moving correctly. If you spend more time teaching somebody how to move and sprint properly, or do effective weight transfer, I think that will have more carryover than dedicating them specifically to the system of training fascia, as you will.
Well, do you remember the old clips of Marv Marinovich? I know you guys are probably too young for this, but Marv Marinovich was a strength coach that worked with Troy Polamalu and also worked with BJ Penn. And his training was pretty revolutionary in a lot of ways. And it was a lot of nervous system type of stuff. They used a lot of speed, oscillation, speed of sport.
Speed of sport. What's his name? He's training in the South Bay, Los Angeles. I forget the coach.
But it was Marv Marinovich.
Yeah, he was the godfather of this.
And so there were a lot of guys that would go down. I never went down and trained with him, and that was a mistake of mine. But what was fascinating is when you look at all the athletes that he was really showing as his poster boy, all of them had done a traditional strength and conditioning program and had a massive base to build upon. And then when they went to go use his training, they had heightened success, and they did better, and they had this kind of novel effect. I don't know what it looked like in terms of a extended timeline where somebody was developed in that program. But everybody that came to it were usually high level athletes, professional athletes. So you're talking about a very, very small cross section of individuals who had come from a traditional strength conditioning. And then when they added that training, it added huge benefit. So, I mean, is it the fact that the training was so good, or was the novel stimulus so high that it was different than what they'd done?
I think it's more to the point of adapting to the specific demands of the sport. We have to be moving fast and producing force at greater impulses than normal. So when you get somebody who's strong enough and they're able to produce those forces, now you teach them how to use it quickly. They're going to be a better football player. They're going to be a better martial artist. But like, that isn't always the right adaptation for everyone, right? So I do think that, like, I wish I could remember this coach's name, but Speed of Sport is his academy in South Bay. You're going to pull it up right now. But anyway, if you're adapting somebody to move at the speed of sport and produce forces quickly.
Oh, it's in Gardena.
Yeah. Man, I wish I could remember his name.
I was working on some articles. Nick Curson.
Yeah. Curson.
Yeah, I was working on some stuff yesterday, and the podcast I did with Sean Waxman popped up.
Yeah.
So I did a write-up on it, just a little bit of narrative, and I'm going to post it on SI. But I was like going through his book, which he was supposed to send me a hard copy. I got to hit him up for that. But yeah, and I forgot his place was right in Lawndale, right near the on the other side of the freeway from In-N-Out Burger. So.
Yes. I've made that sketchy left many a times to go in there. That was actually my first experience with strength and conditioning was with Sean. And he also wasn't ignorant to that fact, even though that his medium of teaching me how to be strong was through Olympic weightlifting. Mm-hmm. He also didn't exactly stress me always going into Olympic weightlifting for a way to get stimulus. It was, we did jumps. We did jump squats with the barbell. We did many different things. I always told him I was getting pinned on the floor by people and I needed to be able to bench press like these 300-pound people. So we did a lot of floor press. I mean, It was always conditioning specific to the demands that I was being asked in
Why
judo.
is it that, like, whether it be the, functional patterns, fascia this, or, Mark Marinovich and this, everybody like goes off to this side and they just kind of like, this is the camp we're in, instead of looking at it and being like, all of this is value, right?
All of these are tools.
If you want to be big and strong, you're going to have to lift weights for big and strong. The one thing that's interesting with a lot of the fascial guys and a lot of the, functional patterns dudes, they are all very, very small individuals. Mm-hmm. They're all little dudes. And if you want to be big and strong and you want to be able to, do some stuff, you're going to have to be able to lift weights. So for a lot of these things, looks great. And should you do plyometrics? Should you splint? Should you run? Should you change direction? Yes. And you should lift some weights. So I understand the idea that I'm going to carve out this niche and this is who we are and we're going to distinguish ourselves and cast stones. This is probably where the fascia and the emotional come up, that they become just,
intolerable.
Well, no, they just become like emotional disasters where they have to attack everybody just because actually somebody clicked in on a podcast where the guy was like, I don't see the value in this. I don't know how you train the fascia independent. You just don't understand it. Your hatred is stopping you.
Yeah.
And all it sounds to me is like the Jedi, where it's like hatred leads to the dark side. Yeah. And it's like, dude, I watched Star Wars this weekend.
At least in jiu-jitsu, you don't understand it. Comes from a place of you truly don't understand it. That's why you're not able to choke the guy out. But here, if I just don't understand it, it means I don't know how to press this thing out and really activate just this really specific part of my body. Yeah. I mean, go get fucked. Honestly, like I only got 45 minutes to train today. Yeah. So get me in and out, make me better, and then get me out of the door.
One of the funny things is 2 weeks ago when Shanji was at class, we were he was just teaching some basic stuff, and it was like a roll back into like kicking the legs up and tucking a leg and then standing up, and we were doing it from like this position here, so it was like different angles. We went to sagittal and then going from a side frontal, and so Shanji demoed it, and all of a sudden like, yeah, I mean, of course I'll be able to do these things. Mm-hmm. And like he was like looking around and he's like, well, why are you the only one that can do this? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, because I train. And because like this is a movement pattern that is very specific. It's kind of like when we were doing the stuff where like you're on the bottom and you're stuck in half guard, where we were kind of throwing over and then ripping through and coming. Yeah. How many people couldn't arch up on their elbow and get their hip and then drive that just that momentum?
Unilateral hip extension. I mean, I could fix that with 5 minutes, somebody on their back, doesn't matter the age, I can teach you how to unilaterally extend your hip just from a glute bridge position.
But that's something that you have to train, that has to be in the training. The only way you train hip extension is the knee behind the glute. I posted on SI, I posted the piece when Kelly Starrett came out to our Power Athlete Collective and really got into the fine points of hip extension and how it only happens within sprinting or when the knee's behind the glute. So another interesting fad that recently popped up, I feel like we have to give a little bit of attention to our Power Athlete alum and friend, Mark Bell, and his sugar diet.
Yeah. I don't know if he's not calling it his own, so I'm not going to say it's his, but he is.
I'm sure he'll come out with a book about it. Yeah. And it'll be right next to the War on Carbs. So you got the War on Carbs and the sugar diet. What I appreciate about Mark is that he calls it sugar fasting. Sugar fasting. And then I think it's the snake diet, sugar diet, snake diet, sugar diet, either way. But what I appreciate about Mark is that he's always looking to other methods to see what works so that he can fit it in. I remember the first time he had done this was with something called like protein leveraging, where he's like, hey, I don't want to get fat, but I'm still really hungry. What can I do in the middle of the night? It was like, hey, grab a couple of hamburger patties and cook them up real quick and eat them. That way you're not looking for ice cream, right? So that was like a tool that he used. Yeah. I also think that in some senses, this sugar diet could be a useful tool for somebody who's feeling really run down over the weekend. And I actually got a fresh perspective on that from my boy, Marty Kate, who... Yeah, we'll give Marty a shout out. We give him a shout out because he blew up my phone this morning. Dude, I feel fucking amazing. You know, this whole weekend I ate nothing but fruit, put honey on everything, and had as much juice as I wanted, but nothing else. And I feel amazing today. I'm like, yeah, you're probably, honestly, he's an enormous frame. Yeah, he's a big dude. And if you're, living in caloric restriction or just not giving yourself enough nutrients, then maybe one weekend where you blow it out with carbohydrates is exactly what you needed to get your energy back. Well, if you look at our, one of our templates is the anabolic diet based off of the work that I did with Mauro de Pasquale. And what we would end up doing is you would end up basically keeping carbs out, and it was fat and protein for the whole week. And then on Sunday, there'd be a carb refeed where all of a sudden we drop all the fat, eat moderate amount of protein, and just crush carbs. It ended up working really well for revamping body composition. The problem is I'd have a massive carb hangover on Sunday. Yeah. And so that made it more difficult for me to train. And I did it for a number of years, and it actually was very helpful for body composition. What I think Mark is doing an interesting job of, and I'll give Ben Skutnik a shout out on this, is Ben's professor at Indiana did something called the Twinkie diet. You guys can look it up. Just Google Twinkie diet, where he ate nothing. I think it was Twinkies, but there were a few other things in there, exclusively for like a substantial period of time, and ended up losing like 27 to 30 pounds and improved all of his blood marker, thus proving, calories in, calories out, that the amount that you're consuming in relation to the amount that your body is using, if you are in a deficit, you will lose weight and be a healthier version. So I think what Mark's doing is pretty interesting in that there's only 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So let's say Mark's having 400 grams of sugar, 500 grams of sugar, he's still only getting 2,000 calories and he's training. So he's effectively eating in caloric deficit. Yeah. Add another 200 grams of protein. That's 800 calories. So yeah. I mean, so he's probably eating 2,800 calories. Yeah. I mean, I know he's eating pretty low protein. So, I mean, what he's proving is that you can even get shredded. Now, here's another thing too, that's a variable. The leaner you are, the more the margin of error is increased. So this is where this thing gets really difficult. Like Mark's pretty shredded, right? He's taken a ton of performance enhancers for a number of years. And he makes no secret about that. So being fairly lean, you have a lot of different levels you can pull. That's why when you see with bodybuilders, there's bodybuilders that have made the Olympia stage on super high carb, moderate protein, low fat. There's guys that have made the Olympia stage on high protein, high fat, no carbs. So the reason being is that you just have a lot of variability. Now, for the people that we've worked with, if you're 30% body fat, you don't get carbs. You got to get pretty low carb. right? Because we have to try to fix a little bit of insulin sensitivity. So we cut the carbs. Once you get to a certain body fat, we can start adding carbs in. Once you start getting like close to 10%, that's when all of a sudden you start getting a big switch. The fat gets dropped and the carb gets up. And it's how I went from like 11, 12% down to like 7%, was I had to, at that point, switch a lever and started lowering fat, eating a lot more kind of lean proteins, and I upped the carb. And then that's when I got pretty shredded.
Shout out to Chuck Poliquin. I love his quote. He's like, what's your percentage of body fat? They're like 20%. You don't deserve carbs until you're 13%.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Or I think it's even a lower percentage, but it's like you have to be lean in order to pull that lever, I think. And we were talking about this a little bit last week, where I think where people get mixed up is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and figure out, oh, dude, there's a diet where I can eat as much fruit and throw as much honey in my face as I want.
It'd be like, hey, I want to be married, but I still want my wife to have threesomes with random chicks.
She's a great girl.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, think about that. That's kind of the similar, like, hey, I want to be married. I want to be in a committed relationship. I want to like build a life with somebody. And I still want to have threesomes every weekend. Yeah. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. The same thing in the diet world, the same thing in the training world. Yeah. Like you have to be able to be very clear about what master you serve, and more importantly, like how you're able to do it. I mean, it's very difficult to start segmenting your time, especially when you're talking about, two completely different philosophies.
I think maybe the rice, chicken, and broccoli diet is probably the more sustainable diet. It's still not very culturally accepted, because we do have holidays and we do have like 4th of July is coming up. And I know Matt Pollock is definitely going to be throwing down some kielbasa's. Okay.
Well, he's dieting on nothing but pierogies and sausage and beer
and sauerkraut.
I do eat a lot of sauerkraut.
When does his diet come out?
I do eat. So from the work we did with Dr. Sabine, one of the key factors or key elements for health has to do with bifidobacteria and the amount that you have in your system. Mm-hmm. High bifidobacteria and you're bulletproof. Low bifidobacteria, you're susceptible to a lot more things. Mm-hmm. So sauerkraut and fermented veggies and that like end up in creating much greater gut, or like protecting against gut permeability. I think I'm saying that right. But they just make the gut more robust and actually increases bifidobacteria. So I have been absolutely crushing sauerkraut. I got red sauerkraut. I got white sauerkraut. I got like kimchi vegetables. I've been looking for anything that's fermented. I've been going to the farmer's market and I'm like, give me whatever's fermented. If you get those fermented pickles, I'm taking those too.
What's impressive is you're not very gassy either.
No. The only time I was really gassy in life was in high school when we were, trying to get bigger and stronger. Zengus gave us this weight gainer shake, and it came in like a 5-gallon bucket, right? Like looked like the fucking Home Depot bucket. Yeah. And it was so thick that like you pretty much had to take like almost like a shovel troll, like a trowel, and like dig it out. I'd put it in the blender, and if you smelled it, you were going to vomit. Yeah. Right. So then I would put water. I would like put anything I could. I put a banana, and then what I would do is I'd whip it all up with ice, and then I'd plug my nose and I would pound this thing, and it had like 100 grams of protein per serving. And probably about 30 minutes later, I like had to go outside because I was afraid to sit inside. Like I was afraid to get like that much methane in one place. Yeah. And so my older brother, when I had a 92 Ford Bronco, so every time we'd get in that car, my brother would be like, this thing stinks. And then when I sold it, he's like, did you take less money because it stunk like farts? And but
always take the leather seats, kids.
Yeah, you never want the cloth. Thank God it was leather. But that was that weight gainer shake to this day, and it's been over 35 years since I drank that. I still remember it, but that was the only time I've really ever been gassy. I've never really had much of an issue. And then I hear people all the time like, oh, I can't eat a high protein diet. I end up with just terrible gas. And I'm like, man, I don't experience that.
I think it's also because people are leaning on shakes a little bit too much. And there's a lot of like gums in there, and also like epic amounts of casein. And that you're just not going to get that much casein when you eat whole foods. Like you only get that ever from like yogurt and milks, and there's just not that much protein in there. And there's also like Paul Chek talks about like modern milk as being dead milk because there are no enzymes in it to help you break it down. So that's why all the rage on raw milk.
I drink one. We get 1 gallon a week, and that was one of Sabine's recommendations for me. It was a 20-ounce glass of raw milk once a week.
How long do you suntan your butthole now that you drink raw milk?
Well,
what is the recommended protocol?
I've been drinking raw milk a long time. What happens is I just somehow I forget about dairy. Dairy's kind of interesting. Like there was a point where I used to crush a lot of Greek yogurt and drink a lot of milk and cheese. And then for some reason, when we moved to Texas, raw milk and like raw cheeses were not as easy to get. They're much more regulated here in Texas. In California, you can buy them at the store. Here, you can't. Like if I want to buy raw milk, I have to contact the dairy and then I have to pay them and then they have to drop it off at a farmer's market. So it's kind of a laborious process to actually get raw dairy. Yeah. So I just stopped doing it and then I just cut all dairy out of my system. And then after I got Sabine's work done with the stool sample, she's like, hey, I want you to do two things. I want you to do a lot more fermented vegetables. I want you to do the Icelandic yogurt, and then I want you to do 1 glass of raw milk once a week, and see if we can get your bifidobacteria through the roof. My gut diversity was like high 7s, low 8s, which basically makes me a low level Hadza. I think like the average person in America is in the 5s and the 4s. Wow. So that I think might be a factor for it. But I mean, it's pretty fascinating. I had Dr. Robert Clancy on the podcast, who's an immunologist out of Australia. And we talked about that idea of like gut resilience. Like the more positive diversity that you have, the higher bifidobacteria, the more resilient you are. So the less apt that things are going to come loose. And the interesting thing is like out of this like spectrum of diseases from everything from, diabetes and cancer, whatever, it's pretty interesting. Like we have all this in us, like which one comes to light, which is the one that kind of starts to take root. And his thought was that environment becomes much more prevalent with low gut diversity and low bifidobacteria, which is also what Sabine had to say. Yeah,
it makes me want to ask you, because you have very good calorie discipline and like you evaluate things for their macronutrient profile. How do you fit in some of these health foods and stay within your macronutrient profile so you're not overeating or undereating or not leaning too heavily on one nutrient? What are some like low calorie options for improving gut health that you know of right now? You mentioned sauerkraut.
So I do sauerkraut. So when I go to the farmer's market, I'll get like sour pickles. I get sauerkraut, and they have both white and red. And then I usually look for some form of kimchi, and I'll add those into my like every single meal. I'm not very like sharp in terms of like adding those into the macros. Like, I had 150 grams of kimchi. I just don't put it in there. I always go back to the Paul Carter one, which is nobody got sent to fat camp for eating too much or like too many vegetables.
Yeah.
So I think it was funny. I mean, and Paul made a great point once where somebody asked him like, oh, hey, I want to like start calculating vegetables in my total macros. And he's like, nobody went to fat camp for eating too much broccoli.
Yeah, you can't. How can you overeat fermented cabbage?
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, and if you've ever tried, there's definitely a point at which all of a sudden you take a bite and you're like, no more.
I think it's really the palm of your hand. If you can eat that much kimchi, and more,
if you can eat more,
probably Korean.
Yeah. So like what I do is I did this, I literally take a spoon and I reach in there and whatever comes out and sticks to the spoon is what I put on the plate. Yeah. Sometimes it's a big glob, sometimes it's a little bit. And then I put a little salt on it. And that is like, for example, I did my aerobic work today. So I've been doing Ben's Build a Base program, which is on Train Heroic, which has been an absolute motherfucker. So I got up this morning, I did that. And then I had 14 ounces of baked chicken, a bunch of kimchi, and then I think I had a golden kiwi. So come to find out that actually golden kiwis are extremely beneficial for gut health. So that was one of Dr. Speen's recommendations. So I had a golden kiwi, had that, and had a bunch of kimchi.
A lot of fiber in that kiwi too.
Dude, and then when she said golden kiwi, I didn't know that there was two types of kiwis. There's green kiwis and golden kiwis.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So I went to the store and I asked him, and the guy's like, oh yeah, like, and I'm like, oh shit, didn't even know that. Yeah. So that piece of like, some form of protein, something fermented, and then I usually do some carb, and I cycle between either like, let's say it'd be like, I like green bananas. That's how I know I'm probably like Tongan or Samoan, or some of the islanders used to love the green banana. So we do the green banana. I'll do either an apple or some form of fruit. And then I do, obviously kimchi, golden kiwis. And then, post workout for a carb, I just do honey. That's kind of like my post-workout. Like I'll do a shake post-workout and I put like a tablespoon of honey in there, and that's kind of my post-workout drink. And then, but that's the only time I do a shake is in the post-workout window. I don't do one before. I always eat real meals. Shit, man. I know he's not listening to the podcast, but Cesar Martinez, who was my buddy who was a bodybuilder I used to train with back in Newport when I was playing in the NFL. Those guys, the minute that they started dieting for their contest, they started eating real food. And I was like, what happened to all the shakes? He's like, you can't get shredded on shakes. So he's like, you got to eat real food. So his limit was like 1 shake a day in the post-workout is all you get. So that's what I keep it up to.
Also, you're a big sweet potato guy.
Yeah.
Too. Not very Brazilian of you. But
why?
Because of the rice and beans.
Yeah, but don't the Brazilians like sweet potatoes? They like yuca or
yeah, they do yuca.
Yuca.
I don't know if they do sweet potato, but I know our Brazilians like sweet potatoes the way you make it.
Yeah,
yeah, with the Japanese sweet potatoes,
I love
a little
those
bit
things.
of honey, a little bit of salt.
Yeah, I do like those. So I think the sugar diet, just to kind of go back, I mean, for a long time, carbs have been blamed for being evil. You know, bad carbs, this idea of good food and bad food. I don't believe that there's any such thing as a good food and bad food. Like, you know, sweet potatoes and carbohydrates aren't going to steal your wallet when you're not looking. And I think what Mark is doing is very polarizing in typical Mark Bell fashion. Mark likes to find these, polarizing things, and he stands on them, he shouts them, and he does them. And he does it, and he gets clicks. I mean, he's got us talking about it. So, I mean, he's got Marty blowing up your phone because it's polarizing. And I think it's great. Yeah. I think what's fascinating is Mark has leaned on this war on carbs, that carbs are evil, fuck carbs, carbs are death for years. So for him to go 180, this is Mark in his true professional wrestling WWE move. He's become the heel. He did. He went heel, right? He was low carb, high protein, carnivore, this. And what did he do? He went 180 and he went heel, and now he's all carb.
Yeah. I think it's also just adding tools to the tool belt. You know, this is not the way that you're going to just completely change your life. It's actually consistency will probably be the most powerful tool that you have, is being consistent. Because Stan Efferding is one quote that I took from him is, compliance is the science. It's like you find something and you comply to it, and then you stick it out, because sticking it out is super simple. You just have to follow the guidelines, but it's fucking hard.
Yeah, it's like dieting, right? Like if you want to be shredded, prepare to be hungry for a long period of time. Yeah, and I wonder, and I was talking to you about when we first started your diet, like. If you're not hungry, then we're not losing weight. Yeah. Like your body is the only person, I've said this on the podcast, the only person I've ever seen get shredded and get in shape and never be hungry is my wife. It's like the craziest thing. She's like, I'm never hungry. And I'm like, because you're the energetic bunny, and she never stops moving. But for me to diet sub 10%, I know I have to be continuously hungry for a long period of time, where I like eat and there's a feeling of like, I don't think I ate enough. I'm still hungry. I need to eat more. And I'll be like, nope, that's all you get. And then I have to kind of suffer to the next one. And I just have to be hungry for a long period of time. I mean, I think because I ate like a full-time job for so many years, that something in my brain has this like innate desire to overeat at every single meal. And when I don't, and when I weigh the food out, that's another thing I do. I always weigh the food to prove to myself exactly how many how many ounces it is. Like there's like, 2 chicken breasts and a little bit is like 13, 14 ounces. I'm looking at that and I was like, I could eat 6 or 8 of those. I would easily cross 40 ounces of chicken.
At the height of my collegiate judo, I was like just going to the supermarket and grabbing a whole rotisserie chicken and 1 baguette, and that was lunch.
So
easy, disappear in 10 minutes.
When I was in college and I was trying to make the jump from like 280 to 300 plus, my goal was to consume 18 chicken breasts a day. That was it. And it was like potatoes. Like I made this thing with like chicken breasts with like potatoes and like little like red potatoes cut in half. And I put them in olive oil and like bake them. And I would try to eat this whole tray every single day. And because at the time, whenever you looked up any like micro or macronutrient stuff, it kind of like labeled foods as just one thing. Right. Okay, chicken's a protein. This is a carb. And it wasn't until you actually opened the book and like looked in there and you're just like, oh, 1 ounce of chicken has this much fat, this and this. Like I just looked at it and was like, oh, they said that chicken has 7 grams of protein per ounce. Those are 4 ounces. That's 28 grams. I'm going to eat a bunch of these, not realizing that has fat in it too. And like there's, obviously most everything has a mix of macronutrients, but I was dumb. And that was my goal. I ended up hitting that like 300 plus pounds. I don't think I ate chicken for like another 7 years though.
Yeah.
So
where does fasting come into play when you're trying to still stay big and strong?
So I did an article for this on Sports Illustrated. There was a really fascinating piece of research that talked about time-restricted windows as a method of bulking. So what they did is they took two groups. They let equated calories the same, and they basically let one group just free eat all day, and then the other group had a 16-8, an 8-hour window. And the group that ate within the 8-hour window with the 16-hour fast put on more muscle and gained less fat. So based upon the research, if you're thinking about bulking or adding calories in to try to put on weight, I think doing that time-restricted feeding is actually very intelligent. I like time-restricted feeding, not for any other reason other than the fact that it kind of gives me some goalposts. I think for most people, just giving them the idea to be able to kind of free eat, it can be a little bit of rough. I think it's easier to say, all right, you know what, from like 10 to 6, these are my windows. I'm going to consume my calories. And I think that allows people to maybe get more done, a little bit more to look forward to, and just maybe some goalposts.
It's supper time, right?
I think it's beneficial.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't do well at, and I've tested this over and over again, is I don't do well eating right before bed. So let's say I go to bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. My last, I'll eat at 6, and then I do like a small helping of yogurt before, like maybe around 7:30 or 8. And then I go to bed at 9:30 or 10. The closer I get to bedtime, like if I were to eat that at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock, I don't seem to do very well sleeping on a full stomach. Whereas when I was young, I could fucking eat like a 6-course meal and then go right to sleep and never have any issues. So that's something I've noticed I've aged, that I don't sleep as well when I eat too close to bedtime.
Yeah, but I also don't do well going to sleep with an empty belly.
Do you have hunger pains when you wake up in the night?
Yeah, I do sometimes. Like I'll wake up in the morning, early in the morning. I'm like, dude, I should have ate closer to bedtime. So I would have wake up not as hungry, which when you talked about the time restricted eating, there was also that bit of research that just came out that you can actually absorb way more than the 30 grams or the 40 grams that was previously thought of.
Yeah. I did that one for SI as well. All the good information we've been putting on SI. But yeah, there was a pretty cool piece of research where they talked about there was no upper limit for protein consumption as it relates to protein synthesis. So there was this, I don't know where it came about. I think it had to do maybe with Barry Sears in the zone, whatnot, but there was an idea that your body could only produce only use 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal. So that was like a big thing. And I heard dietitians and all the other people, but my contention was always like, look at the bodybuilders, look at, from an evolutionary model, that doesn't make any sense. And I think with not only with training, with diet, with everything, if you look at everything with an evolutionary model, if it makes sense on an evolutionary landscape, like there was a pretty interesting talk a guy gave about the carnivore diet, and more importantly, that you can't use the Inuit Indian or the Inuit Indians up in the North Pole, the Eskimos. You can't use them as a model for a modern carnivore diet. And the reason being is that the mammals that they were consuming, which are cold water deep diving mammals, contain much more glycogen in their meat and their tissue, so that actually the consumption of the meat that they were eating had a much higher glycogen content. They were also eating anything they could that looked like a berry, and not anything that was green. And they weren't eating nearly as much fat as what we originally thought, because they used a lot of the fat for heating oil. So, you take and you look at what their diet was, and also you have to remember they don't get the same vitamin D. They don't, they obviously like different sun exposures. I mean, there's completely different in diets. So the guy who's, let's say in Austin, Texas, who's eating a muscle meat carnivore diet, aka the rich guy diet, who just wants to eat Costco fillets every day.
Yeah.
Who's using the Inuit Indians as his model for carnivore. You can't do it. And then the guy made a great point at the beginning. You just can't use this model. And let me give you all the reasons on why these two models don't work. And the amount of butthurt in the comments was like that of like somebody saying fascial training is not a real thing.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at like people can no longer, like there's one of the the tenets of Stoicism are really just intelligence and philosophy. And we talk about this in rhetoric all the time. One of the markers for intelligence is somebody that can entertain an idea without accepting it.
Right.
We did this all the time in some of our debate and some of our argument classes in college was like, I'm going to give you a topic that you don't necessarily believe in, and we're going to argue both sides, and then we're going to switch and see if we can argue the other side of it. And as an intelligent person, you have to be able to listen to something that somebody say and entertain the idea, argue to and for against it, and then discard it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the day that you're so dug in on every single thing that you do and that everybody else is wrong, it's kind of like in Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade. You remember when River Phoenix comes out and he looks around and he goes, everybody's lost but me. You know, that's what I feel like a lot of these guys are doing, that they've become so dug in on a certain philosophy, a certain mindset. This is their identity. This is my handle, that I'm so deep in the fascia. Now I'm the lever king, which is hilarious to me, because I could not imagine a bigger clown than the Liver King. Why you'd want to carry his handle is beyond me.
Yeah.
But to, look at the training, it looks like a lot of step, squat, and lunge and rotation. And like, it feels very David Weck. And we had David Weck on the podcast. I love the Weck boards. Yeah. I love a lot of the intricacies and information. Am I willing to wholesale change and adopt everything? No, but I think that there's different pieces I really liked. I like the shake weights, the eggs, and the running. I like the vest. I mean, the Weck boards, some of his stuff, extremely cool. And his guy, Chasing Intensity. I can't remember his name. One of his coaches. That dude's juggling that 203 pound kettlebell like it's nothing. I mean, that's fucking rad. So obviously there's value in the training if the guy is a huge proponent and doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah, but how much less cluttered will your gym be if there were just a bunch of cable trainers all around?
Well, that's another issue. I was wondering, every time I see the fascial training, and I'm very peripheral in what I've seen, but it looks a lot like cable, free motion machines over the shoulder in different patterns. I had Chris Summer on the podcast, and, Coach Summer, who's developed, 4-year-old kids into the Olympics, talking about, their training, and then me jumping onto his gymnastics body and going through. I mean, that's really the evolution. I mean, that's really, if you want to talk about body weight development and a lot of this fascial stuff, like this is where Ido Portal got all of his stuff. I mean, Coach Summer is really the source for that. So, the issue, and this is what I think we're talking about, whether it be the sugar diet or fascial training or all these different kind of trends or CrossFit, let's say, people just go fucking deep and they like barrel in deep, and they can't get out of it.
Ideology.
Yeah.
Movement ideology rather than movement education, where it's like, hey, we need to get the best information and use tools from everybody, but we're not going to crystallize and dig in our heels. We're going to see what works and not cast any stones because we don't know what works yet.
Yeah.
That's really, but the internet rewards people who cast stones.
Well, they do. And also the more polarizing and absolutely ridiculous you are as a human, and the more like, just ridiculous, the bigger clown you are, the scene where you have more admiration and more people attracting. Right. I don't think that the middle of the road, isocaloric, don't eat like an asshole, lift some weights, do a sport, athletic problem solving. I mean, all the stuff we've been talking about, it's the least sexy approach. Right. And the issue comes is that if you want to believe in magic, there is so much magic on the internet for you to believe in, whether it be movement magic, food magic, supplement magic, peptide, steroid magic, all these things. There's magic in everything. And there's somebody who's willing to perpetuate the magic. And there's magic peddlers. And
the only magic that really make a difference is jiu-jitsu, my friend.
Well, okay. So like, let's take the lens in jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
So, as you know, Victor was drafted by the B team for the Craig Jones Invitational #2. And he was their draft pick, and they're going to bring him in as the ultra and have Nicky Rod do the heavyweight, I guess. And so, Victor, who's steeped in what I like to call our style of jiu-jitsu.
Six Blades methodology.
Yeah, which is Shanji and Salo and Lovato's jiu-jitsu, classic timeless jiu-jitsu, like how jiu-jitsu should be done. Lovato gets a Kimura, I get a Kimura, we give Kimuras. And, and so now Victor's gone over and started training with the B team, and he's being exposed to a different style of coaching and training and a different style of methodology. And what I love about VH, for many reasons, but what I really appreciate about him is his open-mindedness. He's a lot like me, and that I'm a performance whore. He just wants to be the best. And whatever style, whatever he can glean or however he can basically build his suit of armor, he's going to add, which is what I did. If there was something I liked, I added it. And what happens is people get stuck in these dogmas. They get stuck in these, this is the way, this is the only way. I have the truth. I have the light only through me methodology. And like, that's bullshit. If for example, if the fascial training works the way that it does, then they should be able to come and do everything else and do it better than everybody. Right. So like, okay. But what they like to do is like to shit on Olympic lifting or powerlifting or these other pursuits. And it's like, oh, because it doesn't fit within your model. Right. Like you don't fit within my model.
Yeah. So,
but what I appreciate on VH is him going over and training with those guys who have been competitors. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, Daniel and the Lions Den, going in and training with them and, allowing them to, get good roles with him and seeing his style and taking on. And like, all it's going to do is make his jiu-jitsu bulletproof and that much better. And I'm so stoked for him.
Yeah, especially since you're getting a different look, right? Because like we're all coming from the same team. So we're going to give them similar looks. But now that you're going over to a different team, getting a little bit different look, maybe a little bit more of like a scrambled jiu-jitsu. These guys are in no-gi full time.
Yeah.
So like you said, adding to the suits of armor, the things that work, that's going to be what makes you ultimately a stronger human, right? Is adapting to the new stress.
Yeah.
So I guess for your own jiu-jitsu journey, you went from white belt, you skipped the green belt. That's a really impressive.
I didn't even get a stripe at white belt.
Yeah, you went from white belt, you skipped the green belt, the legendary Manousian green belt, and you went to blue belt. How did you stay motivated all that time? Because this is huge, right? Because I could have easily, and maybe this was my mistake because I didn't know you as well when you first started. You could have easily been like, fuck this, I don't want to be on my back anymore. And I don't want to continue getting smashed by these weekend warriors. I want to just, like, how did you stay motivated? What were some of the tools you used or mindset?
I wrote a blog post years ago called ABWB, always be a white belt. And this is long before I ever started jiu-jitsu. And the idea is that you have to be willing to be a student. You have to be able to humble yourself and go in and learn from people that are better than you. And I think what happens all too often, especially in this kind of station in life, where now you've, developed the power athlete system, we have this, or we have coaches and people and thousands of people doing the training. And there's people that have other theories on training and other systems and other methodologies. And you as a competent, successful and let's say humble individual have to humble yourself to go learn from other people. And whether it be sitting there and talking to Chris Summer or going and training with Shanji, like I did not have jiu-jitsu, and it was very apparent to me after that Craig Douglas seminar that I was not comfortable on my back. So then I had to add that system in, like I had to have it, right? Like, what if I'm in a situation and all of a sudden, somebody pushes me down and gets on top of me and I don't have the ability to be able to survive or get up or get back into a fight and do a good position? Not that I'm expecting to get into a fight. It was interesting. When I was probably, let's say 225, 230 pounds when we would go out, like people used to try to fuck with me. And then when I got to be like 270, 280, people, maybe a little bit. And then once I got to be 300 plus pounds, nobody said fucking shit to me.
Yeah.
And like, it's been a long time since I've been in a situation where anybody's been really hostile towards me.
Yeah.
And mainly, even if they were, I would diffuse it in just many other ways. Not that I'm nervous, but like, I'm always training for the contingency.
Yeah.
Like the what if you're in a situation and all of a sudden something happens and I end up on top of me? Or what if I get into a situation and like, let's say somebody's like a Philippe where they're smaller than me, but they have really good, excellent jiu-jitsu and he takes me down and I'm in a situation. I need to know how to be able to like fight back into a better position. What I also really like too is I like community. And when I started doing jits, I would go up and Don was always there. And so I used to see Don, and like I remember Don saying to me, he's like, man, my jiu-jitsu is getting so much better that I have a training partner. And the minute that somebody tells me that and they become like, now we're partners, then I feel like this little bit of like responsibility to show up. Like, what if I don't show up and he doesn't get a good look?
Yeah.
Or what if I show up and I remember like, whether I had to travel and I missed, he's like, man, like I could have used you. Like, we had some people dropped in, we were going to smash these people, and I feel like a little bit of FOMO. And so I told Don, I was like, hey man, I'll give you 1 year because it's a pain in the ass to drive up here for a 6 o'clock fucking session. Yeah. I gave him 1 year, and then, I started going to the lunch class, and I've been missing him. But I feel like that was a big piece. I also, when I got my blue belt, didn't expect to get a blue belt. I'd been kind of waiting for my green belt. And then when they just circumvented that and I didn't get the Manausian magic of the green belt, I feel like I missed out a little bit. Yeah. And then I ended up with a blue belt, and then I ended up with 2 stripes. And I said to Shanji, I was like, dude, I don't feel comfortable having a purple belt. Like I need to train much more to feel comfortable. And that's something that's I heard on a Joe Rogan podcast. I can't remember who the guy was, but he was talking about in jiu-jitsu that as a coach, if you give your student a belt that they can't carry, you do them a disservice. Right. And like, it's always better to be a blue belt who's tapping, brown belts or even fucking up black belts than to be like a brown belt or a purple belt who's getting submitted by fucking blue belts and white belts. Yeah. And, and it's pretty interesting at this point in my jiu-jitsu journey, I can roll with somebody and know about where they are. And more importantly, like all of a sudden you get into a situation, it's like, you roll with a white belt or a blue belt, you realize they probably only have submissions from the top. Yeah. Right. Then all of a sudden you roll with a purple belt and now he's got more submissions, or a brown belt. And then you're with a black belt and it doesn't matter what position you're in, they can submit you from anywhere. Yeah. And so it's almost like I can look at the belt and roll with somebody, and based on like, I'm in a position where I know that I like, hey, I might get loop choked, or I might get this or this or this, and they don't do it. I know that they don't have that move. Then I know I can do some shit.
I would like to add that I don't think a good measure of progress is being like, hey, I'm a purple belt, I can tap any blue or white belt. Because that kind of discounts all the people that started jiu-jitsu much later in life. People who started after the age of 40 or maybe even 35. I'm sorry, but you're just not going to be able to tap out a 20-year-old purple belt from Manaus. Okay, like it's just not going to happen. No. But at the same time, you can compare yourself to the guy that you used to be. I mean, this applies to any other discipline, but you can compare yourself to the guy who used to be. Used to be the guy who couldn't even hold his guard against that top tier purple belt like for a minute. Or, now you get to hold it for 2 minutes. Maybe now you survive.
Or you survive and you don't get tapped out.
Yes, surviving is part of the invisible wins that we like to talk about all the time. It's like survival is a win. Yeah. Some days you're thriving and subbing people and taking them down and scrambling into a good position. That's a huge win, right? But surviving a round against somebody that should be able to tap you 2 ways from Tuesday, that's a huge win.
Yeah, like when I hurt my thumb 2 weeks ago, I dislocated it, but it didn't bother me until a few days later. Yeah. So I rolled that round with Philippe, and he tried to double leg me, and I tossed him over my head basically like a sandbag. Yeah. And ended up on top of him, and ended up not to say he wasn't trying to submit me, but we ended up rolling the full 5 minutes without, and I didn't lose it, or I didn't have it. He didn't gather a submission on me. Yeah. And
because he didn't have the okay, I call the okay bully bell,
And he was like, "Oh, coach," and I didn't know if he was taking it easy on me, but I also think he was shocked because when I tossed him over my head, I could see the look on his face. His eyes were like this big. Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, but I think more to the point that you were talking about community, it works in everything, right? It works in diet. It works in exercise. It works in jiu-jitsu. I mean, right now we've got this little community that we started for just this little, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but this little challenge we got together.
Yeah. So we're going to be coming out with it for Power Athlete. It's called Hammer 90. And we always like to kind of do an in-house challenge to kind of stress test it a little bit before we launch it out. And so we're doing a little bit of stress testing with Ben and Arash and the guys, and Marty's in there, and John. And, we just pulled in like Zach Evanesh and, Polish Matt, and pulled some of like our local bros in, threw some money in a pot, and we got a little bit of a Discord set up, and it's a little bit of shit talking and having a little bit of fun. But it's shared suffering. Yeah. If you have a group of guys, and more importantly, we found that when you create a group, there's shared accountability, and people are less likely to drop out for the mere fact that they're just going to get shit talked. Yeah. And, and then obviously I put out a specific program. I went back into my archives and pulled out the original 22 Jack Street training program that Jack Street was built on, which I have not done since we did the original test. And as we've been going through it, I remembered exactly why I loved that program. So when that gets done, I'll put that up for sale, or maybe I'll run it in Jack Street. But jiu-jitsu is much like that in that when you have a good collection of people and a good group of friends and you feel like good camaraderie and like, you have faith that your training partners aren't going to fucking hurt you. I mean, they might kill you, but they're not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something you want to go, and like, dinging up my thumb and then missing last week, like, I'll go this week, but like, it feels like if missing 2 weeks, might as well miss 2 months.
Yeah.
So got to get back into it.
Yeah. Anything else for me, John?
No, I mean, we covered fascial training. We covered the sugar diet. We covered everything. No, I think it's pretty good. I'm excited for this challenge. I'm excited to see what we can do, and I'm really excited to see you do your second recomp.
Right.
I mean, the first one was so successful.
Yeah. I'm
now,
trying to break the curse of this diet that you gave me, and I'm going to run it for the second time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see how.
I'm running it too.
Yeah.
And so is Matt.
John's, everybody's on it, and it's brutal to say the least.
Well,
guys, thank you for tuning into the Power Blades. Power Blades.
Well, here it is. Power Blades, Power Athlete Podcast. Mr. Arash, thanks for tuning in. See you.
Yeah.
Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by kofi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.